Yeah, I was working at the Hokinson homestead that day. Oh yeah, I used to come out here and ride horses with Louise. Great, I need to talk to you. So we talked for about 20 minutes there, and then some more people came, and I made an appointment to call her back to talk in depth. But before we got to talk, she died. But in the 20 minutes or so that we had when we talked, she gave me this little piece of gossip. Louise Hokinson, and I'll tell you this because I'm almost certain it's true, worked for a doctor in Manhattan. She had an illegitimate child and later killed herself. And that's the sad story of Louise. Now then, the family records don't make any mention of Louise or what happened to her, or when she died, or how she died, or anything like that. But in Anna, Carl's wife, in her obituary, the only surviving family member that was named was a grandson by the name of Toussaint, Tousignant, living in Detroit. If that's Anna's grandson, it had to be Louise's son, right? Since that's the only child that Anna had. I haven't followed up on that name. There's a family with that name that lives, well, down south of Junction City. I should call them and talk to them and see if they know anything, but I've steered clear of it so far. So that takes care of the Hokinsons. Another family that I'll mention is Henry Brunker. Have you heard of the Brunker family? Probably not. Few people have. But Henry Brunker bought property right in here, about a half a mile from the Hokinson homestead. Henry moved in there in 1894, a German, born in Germany, and used German farming techniques. Unfortunately, his wife died 3 years after they moved in there. And they had two older girls, 11 and 12, and they took over the running of the household. Henry hung on to that for about another 12 years, but in 1909 he sold it to the Dewey Ranch. At that time, Chauncey was still in possession. The brokers dispersed pretty well, and although I have leads on a few of them, none are in this area. Well, there are several other families that we could mention. The Red O'Neill family we've already mentioned. And I have a lead to a lady who I think lived on the ranch. She's in Westmoreland Nursing Home, and I need to get up and talk to her before the same thing happens that happened before. The O'Neills, well, have you heard of the Cowboy Church? Just north of Wabego, there's a little church at Louisville called the Cowboy Church. The pastor there is an O'Neill, and I've talked to him a couple of times. And he gives me a name, and I call that name, and that person gives me another name, and I call that person. And so far, it hasn't yielded much. if I can get to the lady up in the Westmoreland nursing home.
That's L.M.A. Howard.
L.A. Howard, exactly.
These are her three brothers.
Oh, great.
94 years old.
Beg pardon?
94 years old.
Is she still up at Westy?
She's in Westy, yeah.
Oh, great.
There's three of us right here. Three brothers.
Three brothers.
Yeah.
We have a fellow living back here.
Larry's sitting back there.
Larry is?
Yeah. Larry O'Neill's sitting right there.
My family, the Britskys, married into the
It's
Indian.
amazing, we're getting into a family reunion here.
They're married down St. Joseph.
Now, I had never run across the name Brisky in all the reading I've done about Konza. But here comes this guy up and says, hey, my dad was born in that house. So, this is going to be a profitable meeting, I can see.
Lots of O'Neills.
But no one's willing to tell me anything. I said, well, you should talk to...
They don't want you to know where the moonshine was made.
That would only apply during Prohibition anyway. Well, there's the O'Neill family that I need to do a lot of work on. And here's a good starting place. I need to get names and phone numbers. One more family that I'll just mention, and I think I've already just mentioned it, Jacobus family. R.E. Jacobus came here and built a beautiful stone house just about 2 miles down or up the road toward Manhattan from here. And started a fruit and vegetable drying business. And this was located in the Fairmont Addition. Well, Fairmont Addition is getting to be pretty busy now, right? But he didn't make a go of it, and he only lasted one generation, although there were 4 generations of the Jacobuses living in that house at the same time. But they only stayed there about 20 years. So, I need to work on Orville Burtis, Jacobus, Red O'Neill. And then we'll go from there. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Yes.
Charlie, did you, in your doing your research, did you ever run across Stadel, S-T-A-B-E-L or L-E?
I have run across it, but I don't remember
Okay.
anything about it. Do you?
Well, the man I know, Ray Stadel, is married to an O'Neill. I don't know whether it's the same family or not, but he and his father had a dairy down there during World War II. They provided milk to the fort.
Mhm.
So I just wondered if you run across.
What is the first name of the preacher at Cowboy Church?
You mean the one in Louisville?
Yeah.
Dan.
Dan?
Dan, yeah.
Yeah. That's right, it is Beaton Bender. Yes.
Uncle John was out there for many years. Uncle John and Aunt Anna. And I can't remember where they used to live, but I know they lived on the Dewey Ranch.
Well, if they were O'Neills and lived on the Dewey Ranch, they lived about right there.
He was out there for a long time.
Do you remember where Old Highway 13 was?
Yeah. Stag Hill?
Well, it started at Stag Hill and ran down through the Dewey Ranch.
Well, Larry lived out there for several years too.
Yeah, they're talking about Chain Creek,
Yeah.
Godwin Hill.
That's exactly
where the
right.
pictures from.
Yeah. For those of you who aren't familiar with the area, Shane Creek, this is another story entirely. How did Shane Creek get its name?
There's a family, the woman Prairie.
Henry Shane came here and settled in Junction City with his wife. Indians or white people dressed up as Indians stole all of his livestock. He said, "To hell with it, I'm getting out of here." And he and his wife put all the remaining goods on a raft and floated down the river. Well, they got as far as Kansas City and they decided, well, maybe we were a little too soon to jump to this conclusion. So they came back up the river.
Where the Lions Ranch is today, where
Big-
Shane Creek drops into McDowell Creek,
Beg pardon?
where Shane Creek meets up with McDowell Creek on the Lion Ranch,
Oh, okay.
that's where the Shanes originally were at.
Well, no, they originally lived in Junction City.
That's when they came back.
And they came back, they basically camped there at the mouth of Shane Creek. And hung on there for a little while and then rented a farm down on McDowell Creek.
Okay.
Yes.
I have another question. The old Neil Homestead was on Prairie. And I can't remember whatever happened to the buildings. Did they move one of those
Yep.
down?
They moved the Neil Homestead building, they moved to the headquarters area,
Yeah.
and that's where Jim Larkins lives now.
Oh, yeah.
They just recently refurbished that house.
Which O'Neill Homestead is that?
It was, O'Neill never homesteaded it. What he did, no. Dewey,
Squatters?
Dewey gave him the use of 160 acres, as long as he paid the taxes on it.
Oh, I see.
But it was, possession was in Dewey's hands.
Yeah.
But basically, he had what would amount to a homestead of his own, 160 acres there.
Well, we had O'Neill's working out there in western Kansas on that ranch too.
Yes. Red's son worked out there, as a matter of fact, and Red's brother, what was his name? His name was Larry, I think.
I think we're almost out there. My dad was out there.
Well, there were a lot of people out there that wish they, Rooster, yeah. So that's where the name Shane came from, for Shane, because Shane's never lived on Konza, or what's now Konza. But they lived at the mouth of Shane Creek, which is on Konza. Yes,
Charlie, up above Shane Creek, who lived or built the dugout that still remains there?
I'm glad you mentioned that. See if I can find it.
And while you're on that, how in the world did they build that huge fence?
The huge what?
Fence,
Which one?
the one that goes just below the dugout, that curves around and kind of goes to the southeast up the banks of Shane Creek there. We followed that up 2 weekends ago, and I can't believe how heavy the rock is
Yeah.
and how long the wall is.
They use basically horses for leverage. And exactly what the technique was, I have no idea. This picture shows what he was referring to as the dugout. Basically, it was a refrigerator. You know what a spring house is? That's the refrigerator. You've got no electricity, you've got cold water coming out of the ground. You run it through an enclosed building, and it keeps the building cool. That's where you store your butter and meat and that sort of thing. There is a one room built above ground here with, going through this door, goes into a very well-constructed chamber. And that well-constructed chamber, I have a picture of, but it's not a very good picture. And you can see the stonework on the ceiling there.